Last Friday, you got paid. Direct deposit hit your account $2,300 after taxes. And for a moment, just a brief moment, you felt okay, maybe even a little proud. $75,000 a year. That number is supposed to mean something, right? That's supposed to be the salary where things get a little easier, where you stop counting every dollar at the grocery store, where you can go out to dinner without pulling up your banking app under the table. But then Monday came. Rent was due. The car payment pulled out automatically. Insurance came out. You grabbed groceries for the week. And just like that, before you even sat down for breakfast, more than half your paycheck had already disappeared. You open your banking app and stare at the screen, trying to figure out where it all went, because you're not buying designer anything. You're not flying first class. You're just living, paying bills, keeping the lights on, getting by. And here's the uncomfortable question nobody around you seems to be asking. If you're making $75,000 a year, why does your actual life feel like you're living on 40? I'm Bull, and that disconnect you're feeling right now, it's not in your head. There's a very real, very measurable reason your paycheck doesn't stretch the way it should. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly where your money is disappearing and, more importantly, what you can actually do about it. Most people hear $75,000 salary and immediately think, that's comfortable, that's above average, that's solid. And technically, they're not wrong. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the median household income in America in 2024 was $83,730. For an individual earner, $75,000 puts you well above the median personal income of roughly $63,000. So, on paper, you're doing better than the majority of American workers. But here's the thing most people completely miss. Your salary is not your money. It never was. Your salary is just a number your employer agreed to pay you before the government takes its piece. What actually lands in your bank account after federal income tax, state income tax, Social Security, and Medicare, that's a very different number. On a $75,000 salary, if you're a single filer with no dependents and you take the standard deduction, your actual federal take-home after all payroll deductions is roughly $58,500 per year. That's about $4,875 per month. You just lost over $16,000 to taxes, and you haven't spent a single penny on anything yet. Not rent, not food, not gas, nothing. But here's what actually happens when you combine that tax bite with today's cost of living. The truth is, $75,000 in 2026 does not buy what $75,000 bought just 6 years ago. According to CPI data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, if you were earning $75,000 back in 2020, you would need roughly $94,000 today to maintain the exact same purchasing power. That's a gap of about $19,000, a full 25%. Your paycheck didn't shrink on paper. The world around it got dramatically more expensive. And most financial advice still operates like it's 2019. Save 20%, invest in index funds, cut the avocado toast, pack your lunch. That advice isn't necessarily wrong, but it completely ignores the reality that the underlying math of American life has fundamentally shifted. The gap between what you earn and what basic things cost has been quietly widening every single month for years now, and most people walking around with a $75,000 salary have absolutely no idea how deep that gap really goes. Most people think they understand their finances because they can see their bank balance, but understanding your finances means understanding the invisible forces eating away at every dollar before it even reaches you. And here's what nobody in the financial media wants to admit. Most people earning $75,000 are not living large. They're not irresponsible. They're doing everything they were told to do. They went to school, they got a decent job, they show up every day, and yet they feel like they're running on a treadmill that speeds up every year while their legs stay the same. That feeling is not a personal failure. It's an economic reality that most financial gurus pretend doesn't exist because it doesn't fit the just budget better narrative. So let me show you the real numbers, dollar by dollar, line by line, because once you see this breakdown, you will never look at your paycheck the same way again. Let's start with the single biggest line item in almost every American's budget: housing. The national median rent for a one-bedroom apartment in January 2026 was $1,450 per month, according to Apartment Advisor data. But that's the national median. It includes small towns in Arkansas and North Dakota. If you live anywhere near a growing metro area, places like Austin, Denver, Nashville, Raleigh, or Atlanta, you're realistically paying $1,500 to $1,800 per month. And if you're in a major city like New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, or Boston, you're easily past $2,000 for anything with walls and a working lock. Let's be generous and say you found a decent one-bedroom for $1,500 a month. That's $18,000 per year on a take-home of $58,500. Right there, you've handed 31% of your after-tax income to your landlord. Now, most people have heard the rule that housing should be no more than 30% of your income. But here's what they don't tell you. That rule was based on gross income, not take-home pay. When you calculate against what you actually receive after taxes, you're already over the limit, and you haven't even turned the lights on yet. But here's where it gets really interesting: your car. According to Experian's third quarter 2025 data, the average monthly payment on a new car in America is $748. Even for a used car, the average sits at $532. One in five new car buyers is now paying over $1,000 per month just for the vehicle loan. But the payment is only the beginning. Auto insurance averages about $208 per month nationally in 2026, according to Value Penguin. In states like Nevada, Louisiana, and Florida, drivers are paying over $300 a month just to stay legal on the road. Then add gas at $150 to $200 per month, maintenance, tires, registration. All in, the average American spends roughly $1,000 to $1,100 per month just to own and operate a car. Let's be conservative and say your total vehicle cost is $900 per month: loan, insurance, fuel, and upkeep. That's $10,800 a year. After rent and car costs alone, you're down to about $29,700 from your original $58,500, less than $2,500 a month for everything else in your entire life. And by the way, that $900 estimate, that's actually being generous. If you bought a new car in the last 2 years at current interest rates, the average new car loan rate is 6.56%, and the average used car rate is a painful 11.4%, according to Experian. Your actual transportation costs could easily be over $1,000 a month. Nearly 20% of new car buyers are now paying over $1,000 a month just for the car payment alone. That's before insurance, before gas, before a single oil change. This is where most people mess up. They glance at their gross salary and think they have room to breathe. They see $75,000 and assume there's space for savings, investments, a little fun. They don't realize that just two categories already consumed half of their real disposable income. Now, let's add food. According to the USDA Economic Research Service, food at home prices, grocery store food, have risen a cumulative 29.4% since March 2020. Beef roasts are up 73.8%, ground beef up 52.5%, coffee up over 47%. Eggs spiked more than 50% since the pandemic started. The average American household now spends close to $700 a month on groceries. Even if you're single and cooking home most nights, you're realistically at $400 to $500 per month. Let's say $450. That's another $5,400 a year. Gone. And here's the part that will blow your mind. We haven't even touched health insurance. If your employer offers coverage, you're still paying your share. The average employee contribution for an individual plan is about $114 per month. That sounds manageable. But if you're self-employed, freelancing, or your job doesn't provide benefits, a silver plan on the ACA marketplace for someone in their 30s now averages between $620 and $680 per month in 2026. And premiums jumped an average of 21% heading into this year after the enhanced subsidies from the American Rescue Plan expired at the end of 2025. That's over $8,000 a year just for the right to have insurance, before your deductible, copays, and prescriptions even kick in. Let's stick with the employer scenario to keep things fair. At $114 per month, that's $1,368 per year. So, after housing, transportation, groceries, and your share of health insurance, you've spent $35,568 out of your 58.5 take-home. You're left with about $22,932 for the full year. That's roughly $1,900 per month for everything else. Now here's the part nobody talks about. What does everything else actually mean? Your phone bill, 80 to 120 per month. Internet, 60 to 80. Streaming services, Netflix, Spotify, maybe one or two others, 40 to 60. Clothing and haircuts and personal care, 100 per month if you're modest about it. Student loans, the average borrower in repayment pays $300 to $400 per month. Got a pet? Add 100 to 150 for food, vet visits, and the occasional emergency. Gym membership, 30 to 50. And then there's everything you can't plan for. The $400 car repair that comes out of nowhere, the $200 dental bill insurance didn't cover, the $500 when your laptop dies in the middle of tax season. Those random hits that always land at the worst possible time. And here's what changes everything about this picture. When you stack all of these small expenses together, they consume another $1,200 to $1,600 per month, which means the average person earning $75,000 has somewhere between $200 and $500 left at the end of each month. That's it. That's your savings, your emergency fund, your investing budget, your entire building wealth line item. Let me put that in perspective. If you save $350 per month consistently, and many people at this income genuinely can't, that's $4,200 per year. Invested at the market's historical average of roughly 10% annually, you'd have about $68,000 after a decade. That's real money, but it took you 10 years to get there. And it's not even close to a down payment on a house in most cities where people earning $75,000 actually live. A median home in the United States is now over $400,000. Your 10 years of diligent saving wouldn't even cover 20% down. But here's where this gets even more uncomfortable. Every expense I just walked through has gone up faster than wages. Between 2020 and the end of 2025, cumulative CPI inflation was about 25%. Auto insurance alone rose 43% since 2021. Health insurance premiums jumped 21% in a single year for 2026. Rents climbed 25 to 30% across most metros since the pandemic. Meanwhile, real wage growth, adjusted for inflation, has barely moved. According to USA Facts, nominal wages grew 3.8% year over year at the end of 2025, while inflation was at 2.7%. That leaves a real gain of about 1%. The gap isn't closing, it's widening every year. And the worst part? $75,000 puts you in a painful no man's land. You earn too much for government assistance, Medicaid, subsidized housing, or meaningful premium tax credits. But you don't earn enough to build real financial momentum. You're trapped in what I call the income illusion, the gap between what your paycheck says on paper and what your life actually costs. Now, here's where this all connects to something even bigger that most people completely overlook. Think about what this means for your ability to handle emergencies. According to multiple surveys, about 56% of Americans cannot cover a $1,000 emergency expense with savings. And you might think, well, that's not me. I make $75,000. But look at the math we just did. If you have $200 to $500 of breathing room each month, one bad month wipes out everything. One ER visit, one transmission repair, one unexpected flight home for a family emergency. Suddenly, you're dipping into credit cards, which charge you 20 to 25% interest. And now you're not just treading water, you're going backwards. This is the part that makes the income illusion so dangerous. It's not that $75,000 is poverty, it's that $75,000 creates a false sense of security that keeps you from making the aggressive financial moves you actually need to make. You think you're fine because the number sounds good. Meanwhile, the math is slowly grinding you down month after month after month. And there's one more thing people at this income level rarely talk about: the psychological cost. When you earn a salary that sounds respectable, but your bank account tells a different story, you start questioning yourself. You wonder what you're doing wrong. You compare yourself to people on social media who seem to be thriving on similar incomes, not realizing that many of them are drowning in debt behind the scenes. The shame of feeling broke at 75,000 keeps people silent, and that silence keeps the illusion alive. This isn't about being bad with money. This is about the basic cost structure of American life in 2026 not being designed for a $75,000 salary anymore. The math doesn't add up, and it hasn't for a while. So, where does all of this leave you 5 years from now? 10 years? If nothing changes, if you keep earning roughly the same with small annual raises, if costs keep climbing 3 to 5% a year, if you keep the same financial routine, here's what happens. That 1,500 rent becomes 1,750 or 1,800. Your car payment stays flat or goes up when this loan ends and you finance another vehicle. Groceries cost 15 to 20% more. Insurance keeps climbing. And your salary? Maybe it grew 3% annually. That takes 75,000 to roughly 87,000 by 2031. Sounds like progress, right? Except inflation ate every single dollar of that increase. Your purchasing power is flat. Your stress is the same. Most people in this position will be at 40 in nearly the same financial reality they were at 30. Different apartment, same monthly anxiety. Different car, same payment. A slightly bigger number in the 401k, but still not nearly enough to feel secure. Still running the paycheck-to-paycheck treadmill, just a little faster. Meanwhile, the people who actually break out of this cycle don't do it by cutting coffee. They do it by changing the equation entirely. They acquire a skill or certification that commands 95,000, then 110, then 130. They relocate to a city where their dollar stretches 30% further, where 1,200 in rent buys what 1,800 gets elsewhere. They house hack with a roommate or buy a small duplex. They negotiate their salary at every opportunity instead of accepting the default 3% raise. They build a side income, freelancing, consulting, a small online operation that adds 500 to 1,000 per month outside their job. They stop optimizing pennies and start redesigning the architecture of their financial life. The difference between these two groups isn't intelligence, it isn't luck, it's awareness. One group recognized the illusion. They understood that earning 75,000 and living comfortably on 75,000 are two completely different things in 2026. Once you see that clearly, once you stop pretending the numbers work when they don't, you stop playing defense and start playing offense. You stop asking, how do I survive on this, and start asking, how do I change this? Because the rules changed. The cost of being alive in America went up 25% in 5 years. Most people's paychecks barely moved. And the institutions that are supposed to help, the employers, the insurance companies, the landlords, they all adjusted their prices upward. Nobody adjusted yours. Recognizing that isn't pessimism. It's the first real step toward doing something different.
Look, nothing I showed you today is meant to make you feel stuck. It's meant to make you feel informed. Because the most dangerous thing in personal finance isn't being broke. It's thinking you're doing fine when the math quietly says otherwise. It's going through life assuming your paycheck covers your reality when the numbers stopped adding up years ago and nobody bothered to tell you. $75,000 is not a bad salary. Nobody is saying that. But in 2026, it is no longer the comfortable, breathe-easy middle-class income it once was. The sooner you accept that, really accept it, not just nod and scroll past it, the sooner you can start building around it instead of being blindsided by it at the end of every month. You get to decide what happens from here. You can keep running the same numbers and hoping they somehow work out differently next time, or you can look at the math with clear eyes, understand exactly where you stand today, and start making the kind of deliberate moves that actually shift the equation in your favor. The question was never, am I earning enough? The real question, the one that actually determines your future, is does what I earn honestly match what my life costs? Now you know the answer.